I woke up on a plane. I'm going on a trip with this boy whose name is Timmy, and who also appears to be my son. I take a look at a survival book I had given him, but then the plane breaks and starts falling towards the ground. I wake up and I see a man covered in red paint pick up my son and leave, but I'm too weak to follow. Everything goes black again. I wake up not sure how much later, but the plane is completely empty. My son is gone and I need to find him, but to do that, I need to survive this new environment. I looked down and saw the dead flight attendant with an axe in her stomach. I thought that my chances of surviving would be much greater if I had an axe than if I didn't, so I repulsively take it. Then I also take her clothes, but that's not as important. There are a few drinks, snacks, and meals scattered around, but no person. I quickly run to the edge of the completely broken plane to see if I can see a trace of anyone, and especially the man covered in red, but there's nothing. It is very weird that none of the other passengers are here. Not a single alive or dead body can be seen anywhere. I found a passenger list. There were passengers on board, and if I survived, someone else must have survived as well. Before I try and find Timmy, I thought that I should take all of the stuff that I could find in these travel bags to give myself and Timmy a greater chance of surviving. After that, I also remember that I still have the survival book that I took from Timmy on the plane, and it might become necessary. Now it was time to leave the crash plane and try and look around for something. As far as I'm aware, this could be a tiny forest, so the goal is hopefully to find something remotely civilized. I walk for a while and then I get to the ocean with no land in sight. I don't see anything resembling a house, a person, or a campsite. I follow the coastline to hopefully find something, a trace of civilization. I keep on walking until I see some containers. I get hopeful and head towards them. Here I also see these sticks with something on them, but I barely glance at them. I go up to the containers hoping they would be an indication of civilization, but the containers seem old. There are signs of corrosion, meaning that they have been there for a while. The insides are almost completely empty with only motherboards inside. These containers must have been washed up from the ocean, so I lose hope and continue on. It didn't take long though until I found these wooden constructions. Someone must have built these, and it didn't take long for me to find out who. Just around the corner there seemed to be people. I walked towards them but quickly slowed down when I saw that they weren't wearing any clothes and they were moving incredibly weird. They also screamed at me with broken voices. I turned around and there were suddenly a lot of them surrounding me. I slowly walked away, but they followed me, and that's when I saw a tiny village which they must live in. I started going towards it and saw another one of these sticks when I saw that there were chopped off heads on it. One of them attacked me and I didn't know what to do but respond in the same way. I ran away, didn't know what to think. I just killed someone. Someone from what seemed to be a tribe of cannibals. So not only do I have to survive the wilderness, but crazy cannibal people too. I continued on walking, but it became increasingly hard to follow the coast, so I walked a bit further up on land. I then decided to go as high as I could to get an overview of the forest that I'm in, hoping to find somebody else. But the moment I got up, the realization sets in. Not only can't I see traces of anyone else, I see that I'm on a very small island. I decided to keep on walking and try to get higher up, but I can't since it's way too cold. Because here it's snow for some reason, and that makes a lot of sense. The fact that we're on an island means that the red man can't get away that far, so I decide to continue looking by the coastline, but to no avail. But then I see something. A sailboat? I ran down to it and I was just about to hop in the water and swim over until I saw some sharks laying washed up on the beach. But since they were literally dead, I took the chance of swimming over anyways, hoping to find someone there. But the same thing here. Not a single alive person anywhere, but a lot of human traces. But now it was also night, and since I hadn't really found anything, I decided that it was probably best just to sleep. I wake up the next morning very hungry. I ate some of the snacks that I picked up from the day before, but I realized that I won't be able to live off this, and to be strong enough to find my son, I will need to find some source of food on the island soon. Since the island is so small, I know that the person in red and all of the other passengers are in a close proximity to me, so if I just focused on surviving and looking for traces for my son, I would eventually run into them. I swim back to the island and look through the survival book once again to find anything that could possibly help me with my food situation. There were a lot of instructions on how to construct traps to catch animals, but that is when I realized that I didn't even know if there were any animals on the island at all. So I once again walk into the forest. While walking, I pick up rocks and sticks and berries that might come in handy in the future. It doesn't take long though for me to find a rabbit running around on the ground. I try to sneak up on it and kill it with my axe, but it is too fast and dodges every hit I take. I pull out my bag and see what I have to maybe find a way for me to better kill animals. I take 2 sticks and combine them into a spear that I then can throw, which makes it possible to catch animals from a distance. I find some more rabbits and try my new method, and it works a lot better. While hunting for more rabbits, I also find that there are deer on the island. These are not only a bigger target, but they also provide more meat and deer skin that could be useful in the future. After hunting all day, I used the survival book to make a campfire where I cooked some of the meat I hunted. I decided not to eat all of it because I will be hungry in the future. Now I had to sleep, but I had no shelter and I wasn't going back to the boat, so I had to make a leaf shelter. Next morning, I was walking into the forest again when I thought to myself that it would probably be best for me to make a more permanent shelter that I could use as my home base. I thought that a good place to build a base would be at a high point with cliffs on one side, since then I wouldn't be able to be attacked from at least one direction. So I started walking towards the hill I went up the first day to see if it would fit my demands. But when walking, I found a very big village. This means that there are more cannibals than the ones I had encountered. The village seemed to be empty right now, so I took my chance at looking through it and seeing if there was anything of use, which there definitely was. They had a lot of cloth, but also a bunch of soda boxes for some odd reason. The looting was really successful, but then I saw something I wish I hadn't. First I thought it looked like a dead animal, but when I got closer, I saw that I'd found some plane passengers. Just not in the state that I thought I would. These cannibals were much worse than I thought they were. They had completely desecrated these bodies. I got way more stressed now, thinking if they could do this to these people, what would I have done with my son? I had to leave, but I saw that it was probably not going to work. I looked around for solutions and saw what seemed to be a man-made entrance to a cave, and as the cannibals charged me, I climbed down immediately. It was very echoey in here, making every cannibal scream much louder and scarier. My fear was still high since I didn't know if the cannibals would follow me down here, but when I eventually got down to the cave floor and they hadn't followed me, I guessed that they didn't know how to climb these ropes, but that only meant that these entrances had probably not been built by the cannibals, but by other people. As soon as I got down, I saw someone who was equipped with climber gear, and it seemed like this person had been here for quite some time, so there had been others here at some point. Right next to this person there was actually a lot of useful stuff. I for starters found a piece of paper that I decided to use for drawing a map. Since I didn't want to go up again, I started to go deeper into the cave. I encountered a cannibal down here, which means that they can get down here somewhere. I killed it, but then I accidentally put it on the fire, which turned it into bones. I took the bones and upgraded my spear. I continued walking deeper and happened to find the head of Timmy's toy. This must mean that he has been down here not too long ago. Where is the red man taking him? With this new discovery, I didn't really know what to feel. Should I be happy or should I be even more scared? I continued on walking though. I came here where there was a bunch of cloth, but also a rope that led down here. It seemed as if someone had been down here to hide all of this away, like this murder report and these books that seemed to be about this island. One really good thing I found was this much better axe that I would now be able to use. But now I felt like it was time to leave, so I climbed all the way up again and then I followed this passage that actually led me out again. I took a couple of seconds to catch my breath. There is something about this island. It has a lot of dark secrets and it seems like I had to find out all of them to figure out what happened to my son. Now though, it was time to continue to do what I did before being forced down into the cave, which is to find a safer place and construct a secure base. So now I once again started walking towards the area with mountains. While walking I saw a lot of other cave entrances, so I know that there was a lot more to explore underground. I eventually came to this water when a cannibal came out of the forest and charged against me. I immediately jumped into the water to try and escape until I realized that it was no longer following me. It seemed as if the cannibals were not able to swim, so it didn't follow. I felt relieved to have come away as easily as I did, and I started walking towards the hill. When I was there, I saw how great of a location this would be. There were cliffs on the sides, meaning that the cannibals would only come from one location, but there was a tiny lake here, so if I just built my house in the middle of it, I would be completely safe from the cannibals. There was one cannibal here, but it soon left. Since it was already late, I built another leaf shelter to sleep tonight. I woke up the next morning hungry and thirsty. I wanted to eat some of the meat that I had saved since my hunting, but I saw that it was spoiled, so I looked through my survival book for solutions and I saw that you could make a drying rack. But for today I had some snacks and some soda and I could fix that stuff later. Now it was time to start building the base, so I put down a schematic for a foundation. I built myself a log sled, took out my axe and started chopping down trees. The foundation needed a lot of logs, so I had to go up and down this hill quite a few times to get all the material that I needed, but then it was finally done. Now it just needed some walls and a roof to be considered a base, so I put up the schematics and got to work again. A lot of wood was needed and the edge of the forest was getting further and further away from my base. Where there once had been a forest, there was now just plains of grass. I built some more storage for various things and a bunch of other things that I might or might not need. After some days of building, I took a well-deserved rest. But now, since I had a safer place to call home and a checkpoint to base my further travels on, I decided to go out looking for more clues on where my son and the other passengers could have gone. I walked for a very short time until I found something that I was shocked to have missed. A massive sinkhole. From what I could see, there was only rock down there. It might be a possibility that it's connected to at least one of the cave entrances that I'd found previously. And since I didn't see a good way of getting down there, I continued walking until I found some remnants of what seemed to be normal humans. There was a campsite with modern tents, but the people who had been here were most probably not alive. I looked around and found this piece of paper that said survivor. It seemed like this had been a film crew filming some sort of survivor film or experience. I walked a bit more and found another campsite. This one seemed to be older though, looking at the tents and the things scattered around. This site also had a bunch of crosses and Bibles laying all around, so this seemed to have been some sort of missionary mission. It seemed like a lot of different people had made it to this island, but all had somehow encountered the cannibals and met the same fate. I then made it back to the boat and decided to take a closer look at it this time. When I walked aboard, I found something immediately. One thing was this magazine that dated all the way back to 1984, so this boat had been here for a very long time. I also found this Polaroid photo of something I didn't even know how to describe. When looking at it, I also saw that the photo seemed to have been taken in a cave, going off the rocky background. If these things existed down in the caves, I really had to be prepared for the next cave I go in. After these discoveries, I left the boat for the second time and decided to follow the island shoreline until I once again made it to this hill where there was snow for some reason. I walked into the snowy landscape again, but realized quickly that I had the wrong clothes for doing that. So I checked what I had and realized that it was probably possible to make warmer clothes from the different types of skin that I had collected. All I was missing was some boar skin and a raccoon skin, but that wouldn't be that big of a problem since there were a bunch of boar by the edge of the snowy landscape. So I was able to kill the right amount and now I was only missing a raccoon, but I would probably not be able to find that here. I decided that since the sun was going down, it was time to go back to the home base. And that is when I saw that the home base was just across this big gap. So if I don't remember wrong, I could build myself a zipline that would take me across this gap if I ever needed more materials or need to go to the snowy landscape. So I placed one end of the zipline and walked all the way over to my home and placed the other one. But I could only go from the snowy side to my house with this one, so I went to sleep and came back the next day and built a platform and a new zipline. Today I felt brave enough to venture down into another cave, but just before doing that I checked if there was something that I could build to make myself more secure, and there were. I could create a bow with arrows. This is great because then I could shoot the cannibals from a distance. I also made fire arrows with the alcohol that I had saved. Then I ventured into the first cave entrance that I saw and I hadn't been in already. I made it down to the bottom and holy, what in the world? This is the thing that was on the Polaroid photo that I found. I lit my arrows on fire hoping it hadn't seen me. But it definitely had. I started shooting at it while it pushed me back further into the cave. I got some distance from it and continued shooting at it from afar. I was actually able to kill it. I went up to it and realized that I could use its skin for armor if I wanted. I was then able to continue and that's when I saw that there were mutants here that looked very much like babies. But they attacked me, so I had to kill them too. This cave was very small. I had explored the entire cave, so I climbed up the rope again. Coming out of this cave with nothing notable felt very bad. No clues to what happened on this island. No nothing. In disappointment I walked home, but what I saw when I got there was not the best of views. A pack of cannibals were inspecting my base. I slowly walked towards them to try and avoid being seen, but they saw me. They ran over, so I ran as fast as I possibly could into my base, but they followed. But just as I had planned, they ran into the water and drowned. The others soon left and it felt safe to sleep again. After my disappointing cave adventure yesterday, I felt like I had to do it again, but this time go for a larger cave. So I headed to another cave entrance, quite far away from my base camp. But on my way there I found turtles that I killed and I took their shells. Something told me that this would work great as a sled, so I tried it and it was very enjoyable. But I also thought that these could be very useful for collecting rainwater for drinking, so I ran back home with the shells and I set up 3 water collectors. I then once again headed for the other cave entrance. I found this one. When coming down here I found another piece of Timmy's toy, but also 2 drawings that seemed to have been made by Timmy as well. But still, this meant that he was alive and still on this island somewhere. Something else that was down here was another but different mutant. Since I saw it early, I started shooting at it from far away, so I wasn't in as much danger. I was able to kill this one too and get another armor piece. I went further down into the cave and made it to this underground camp where I found a katana. I used the katana to punch open this wooden wall where I found another very useful thing, a flashlight. Now I would be able to see much better down in the caves. This was the end of this cave, so after that I started heading up again. When I finally got out of the cave, I didn't really know what to do. Why were there so many remnants of things from so many different time periods? Why was a piece of Timmy's toy down here? And why were his drawings down here as well? The only good part about this was that I kinda knew that the red man who kidnapped my son was probably keeping him alive somewhere. But these mutants only make me question even more things. I walked home and calmed myself down on the way there. I immediately went to sleep. I woke up the next morning and remembered another thing that I had found down in the cave. It was a picture of a tree with an X marked on some stones just behind it. And if I'm not completely dumb, I think I've seen this exact tree by the boat. So maybe there would be some clues about what happens on this island there. Since I already knew the way, I came there very quickly. And when I arrived at the tree, I saw some sort of stone thing buried in the ground. It also matched up exactly with the picture, so it was definitely the thing that had been marked. I didn't know what this picture wanted me to do, so I thought the most logical thing was to throw a stick of TNT on it. And to my surprise, that actually worked. Inside it, I found a piece from an old flintlock pistol, and it was marked 2 out of 8, which could only mean that there were 7 other pieces out there that I could find to make a complete pistol. Depending on how strong this would be, it could be very helpful. On my way home, I actually found another one of these concrete things, so I blew it up and picked up another piece of the flintlock pistol. Only 6 more to find. I then walked back home, and just on the hill by my house, I saw a raccoon, which was the final animal I needed for my warmer clothes. So I snuck up on it and shot it with my spear. I skinned it and completed my new set of incredibly nice looking clothes. I slept and then I woke up and I immediately took the zipline over to the other side. I knew that I would probably walk a lot slower in the snow, so to be able to run away from surprise attacking cannibals, I made some snow boots. Then I started walking up the snowy hill. Up here there were some tents, which meant that somebody had decided to sleep in the snow when there was literally no snow only a couple of meters away. But except for that, there wasn't really anything of interest here. I mean, the turtle shell worked a lot better here. A lot better than on the grass, but other than that, there wasn't really anything here. That is at least until I found something a bit further away. I thought that I was hallucinating, but it really did seem like there was another crashed plane over there. I started sprinting towards it and I saw that it was a lot smaller than the plane I had been in. Or wait, this is the plane that I was in. This was the cockpit that had been broken off while we landed on the island. I walked inside it and there were 2 pilots. Both of them have died from the impact. Right next to them I found something that could be very useful. A flare gun. I picked it up and immediately shot it towards the sky, but it was very obvious that this wasn't going to work for me. The flare gun didn't go high at all and the flare it produced was too weak to be seen by anyone from any distance. When I got home I needed to eat something and I realized that my source of food was running out, so just before bed I made a plantation and planted a bunch of seeds that I had picked up in all my different journeys. When I was done with that, a cannibal was standing not too far away from me, so I took up the first weapon I found. Oh, I can use this as a weapon instead! When I wake up the next morning, I decided that it's time to go underground again. Some of the caves I had been in I couldn't explore to the fullest because I didn't have the correct gear, but I knew from the ropes and the air canisters scattered around all the different caves that someone who has been here has had their correct gear, and if my suspicions are correct, no one seems to be able to leave this island, so somewhere down in the cave systems there should be something to allow me to climb the walls and something to allow me to breathe underwater. So I entered the cave and walked cautiously through it. This is the one I had already been in, but if I remember correctly there was a wall that I could probably blow up. I found the wall and I threw a TNT at it. It seemed like the entire cave was coming down, but then when the smoke cleared I saw more cave that I hadn't explored. I went through it and it didn't take long at all until I found what I had been looking for. A climbing axe. So now if there was an obstacle that I would have to climb across, I would be able to do that. But another thing that I came across in this cave was this camcorder tape labeled opening the artifact. The artifact? What is that? Does that have something to do with all the weird things that seem to happen on this island? If I only had something that I could play this tape with. I still kept it in hope of finding either a camcorder or a tape player sometime in the future. But after finding that, I didn't really need to be down here anymore, so I left. I felt that I could tick off another cave while I was at it, so I walked to the closest one that I could find and I hadn't been inside already. I heard cannibals, but to my ear it didn't sound like there were too many of them. I then saw them and they attacked me, so I hit them back. Luckily it wasn't too hard for me to fend them off. I continued on and then found something very interesting. A not-so-living person was sitting there with what seemed to be a scuba diving set. And since I knew that there were places in the caves that were submerged in water, I thought that maybe I should take it. So I did. I jumped down in the water just beside it to see if it worked, and it very much did. But then I saw that this was also one of those underwater caves. So I followed the water cave and eventually made it here, where there was a massive black stone door with some sort of altar in front of it. What in the world was this and how did it get here? I didn't really know what I was supposed to do, so I placed some stones on the altar, which seemed to be some sort of pressure plate because the door started opening more and more the more stones I added on the altar. When it was open, I tried to find an explanation, but I couldn't find anything, so I continued on to these tents where there was food, items, and old tents. So someone had swam all the way down here with all this stuff. I then left and eventually made it to the surface again where I set foot home. When I woke up the following morning, I felt like I really needed answers to at least one of my questions. So I once again set off towards another cave. This time I decided to go a bit further away. I made it to this entrance. I walked inside it and found even more passengers hanging from the ceiling. And not even 20 meters later, I see another big mutant. I had a massive high ground that I used to my advantage until I accidentally fell down. This mutant was a lot stronger than the other ones I had encountered. It was barely affected by my flare, so I had to shoot my arrows, which finally got it killed. I broke open this wall and came to this massive cave. I started to climb down and found this photo. I continued climbing down and I came here where there was another mutant. It was a lot faster than the other one, but it got stuck on a wall, so I was able to kill it. I climbed down further. I found another Polaroid photo that showed another cave entrance. I kept on going deeper into the cave and found these two cannibals that were dancing in perfect sync. Here there were also more mutants that tried to kill me, but instead of trying to fight two at the same time, I fled through this section. Here I also found another tape, but I still needed something to watch it on. I blew open this wall and the cave on the other side seemed to be empty. There were two mutants down here as well, but I didn't know where to flee, so I tried to fight both of them at the same time, and it actually worked. These two were guarding another set of big doors, and behind them there was this stone passage, and on it was another piece of Timmy's toy. He had been all the way down here too. I hoped there would be something further ahead, but it was just another dead end. So I started heading back and came to where the other mutants were, but now I fled into the water instead and came out to where someone had set up camp. And here I also found a much better bow, but that was all that was interesting. So I left and I started to climb back up again. I went a different way this time and ended up on this ledge that gave me a way better look at the sinkhole. Not that there was much more to see except for this helicopter. Someone else had crashed here, but I don't know how long ago. I looted what there was to loot and then I went up to the surface again. I checked my notebook and wondered why there was a Polaroid of a bunch of dead people with a text saying keycard. Was it all somehow connected to the sinkhole, and if so, how? While thinking about all of these questions, I came across another cave entrance that I hadn't been in before. And since it was getting darker outside, I thought that it would probably be more dangerous if I was on the normal ground, so I entered. I think I was wrong because here there was a lot of cannibals, but it was good because now I had time to test my brand new bow, and it was a lot better than the one I had crafted myself. After killing the mutant, I walked around the cave and happened to find another videotape, but the cave was far from fully explored, so I broke this wooden barricade and found another videotape. I also came across another drawing of this thing that I had seen being drawn on walls before. Then I found another wooden barricade that I broke that led to this place that looked awfully similar to the place on the Polaroid photo. But to get down here I needed to kill another big mutant. This one was much more resistant to my arrows than the other ones had been. I even got down to its level just to get a better shot at killing it. Which I eventually did. After killing it, I found the keycard that the photos had been pointing at. There was Sahara written on it, but everything else was pretty much covered up by blood. But that found was quickly overshadowed by what I found next. A working camcorder. I was now able to watch the tape that I'd been finding everywhere. I decided that this was enough caving for today, so I quickly got out of the cave. When I walked home, it was very obvious that most of the cannibals on the island were aware of my existence. There were patrols right outside my base that attacked me. But I couldn't die now. Not now, when I probably had some sort of answer in my hand. I made it home and started watching immediately. The tapes were labeled, so I watched them in order. The first one was called Megan's Arrival. In this tape, someone was flying a helicopter with this little girl that was probably Megan. Wait a minute. Is this the same Megan? Let's watch the second one, named Lunch with Megan. There seemed to be a cafeteria of sorts and Megan was there eating. Not that descriptive, but the third one seemed interesting as it was called Opening the Artifact. Wait a little again. That's the artifact that the cannibals seem to be so obsessed with. Is this laboratory on this island? What does it do? They were doing things with kids? What is this? Did Megan survive that? Why did they keep a mutant in what seemed to be a kid's room? Why does the room look suspiciously similar to the room where the kid was having a seizure? What? Are the mutants kids who have been experimented on? Tons of questions were going through my mind and I didn't really know what to do. I had been here for weeks at this point. What if the red man was working with them and he had brought Timmy there? They could have done anything to him during this time. Was one of the mutants I had already killed him? I looked through my items again and saw the keycard. It said Sahara, but this time I got a feeling that I had seen this logo before. If I'm not mistaken, the containers that I passed on day 1 also had this logo on them. I felt like I couldn't wait until morning to find this out, so I ran all the way over to them and saw with my own eyes that they indeed did have Sahara written all over them. But what I saw here that I didn't see on the keycard is that it said Sahara Therapeutics. It was a medical company. And if these were here, and the keycard was here, and the tape showed doctors and the mutants that I'd seen, it must mean that this laboratory was here somewhere too. How do I get there? What have they done to Timmy? Is the red man connected to this place as well? What if they experimented on... I refused to think about that and instead decided to focus on finding clues and answers to what in the world was happening on this island. I looked through all the different notes, photos and sketches that I'd found. It seems like the habitants or cannibals seemed to be obsessed with this artifact that we could see in the video. They were worshipping it like it was some sort of god, or maybe it has abilities that do godlike things. Why there were crosses and Bibles everywhere just seemed to be because the mercenaries have come here to Christianize the inhabitants without knowing that they were cannibals. That's why most Christian items are found within barricaded sections of the caves with crosses on them. They were trying to flee the cannibals. But even though I had real pictures and documents, the most informational papers were Timmy's drawings, because they showed me that he had been kept alive. It seemed as if Timmy just drew random things, like this drawing probably just showed a cannibal tearing someone's head off. He had also drawn me and him just before going on the plane, and he'd seemed to be happy. But then he has drawn the same picture, but he's holding hands with a man painted in red. But in this picture he looks rather unhappy, and his toy is broken. Maybe his drawings weren't just random. Maybe he was depicting what he was going through, because the next drawing showed a barricade down in the caves. Then I saw a very interesting thing. First he had drawn a forest with a big black deformed circle in the middle. That could be the sinkhole, but it could also just be a small pond. But then, a drawing made from the bottom of the sinkhole. He had been down there? Maybe all my suspicions were right. Maybe that is where I have to go to find him. Maybe there is something down there that leads to the answers to all of my questions. There's only one way to find out, and that is by going down there. But before doing that, I decided that it would be best if I was fully prepared. So I would have to take some days to look around the island for everything that could help me fight whatever monster was probably down there, but also just to help me actually get down there. So the first thing I thought to do is to look for the rest of the parts for the old gun. I now had 8 photos with X's on them, so now I only had to find all of these spots. It was hard and took longer than I thought, because some pictures were just images of random trees and parts of the forest that looked very like any other part. But by looking very thoroughly, I was able to find every piece that I needed. But on my way home I saw that 2 mutants were standing outside my house waiting for me. I tried to sneak not to get noticed when I saw one of the mutants walk down into the water and then let off a weird sound. I also saw that the other one was stuck, so I walked towards them and saw that the one that walked into the water actually drowned. But since the other one was stuck, I decided to combine the gun and try it on this mutant to see how effective it would be, and it seemed to be very effective. I now had a good way of protecting myself, but still no way of getting down into the sinkhole. I thought that it could be connected to the cave somehow, and that is when I saw a blueprint for a raft in my survival guide. Maybe if I built this and go around the mountains there would be a path or something. I first tried to go behind the large mountains because in one of the tapes it seemed as if wherever they were going it was built on a mountainside. But the raft just wouldn't go up there. Maybe it was natural currents or something. All I know is that it didn't work to go there. So instead I headed south towards the tinier islands to see if there could be a cave entrance on any of these. These islands didn't seem to have anything on them though. They were just empty. But there was something of interest here. I got stuck on a piece of wood that had a rope attached to it. The rope seemed to be anchored down to something on the bottom, so I put on the rebreather and jumped in. I followed the rope and to my surprise there was a cave entrance here. Could this lead to the sinkhole? I followed it and came to this air pocket with what seemed to be a model, and right next to it there was a schematic on how to build it. This was rather disappointing, so I went back up to my raft and continued on. I checked out some more islands and found what seemed to be an old shipwreck. I swam out to get a better look and saw another anchored rope leading down into the ship. I followed this one and found very interesting things. Not only was there a drawing on how the ship looked before crashing, but there was also a crossbow and there were schematics on how to build a church, a cross and a coffin, which meant that this was probably the ship that the mercenaries had been on. And by the looks of it, they came here by accident, crashing their ship with no way of getting out of here. So they didn't even interfere with the cannibals on purpose. I left this cave with a feeling of unease. It really seems like if you get to this place, there's really no way for you to get away from it. But I kept my hopes up by continuing to look through smaller islands, but I didn't find anything. I paddled my boat to the last island, which was also the biggest one. But unfortunately, there was nothing here. I was extremely disappointed and started heading home with no hope of finding anything. But that is when I stuck on another floating piece of wood. This would be my last chance of finding something. I came down into the cave, but it was just another dead-end air pocket. Here though, it seemed as if someone had gone crazy because there were drawings covering the entire walls. These drawings depicted what seemed to be a lonely person, maybe a self-portrait of someone who had gotten stuck down here. I found another schematic on how to build a massive tower, but except for that there was nothing but these other drawings. I went up to my boat again feeling very down. Now I didn't really know what to do. I felt like there was no other way for me to get down into the sinkhole. There didn't seem to be a passage down and I wasn't able to build anything to get down there. It felt like all the time I had survived here was for nothing. No one was coming to save me. There is no way of knowing if Timmy is still alive and if he's even still on this island. I felt completely hopeless. And when I came home I didn't know what to do. I took another couple of days looking through the caves again to see if there was anything that would lead me into the sinkhole, but there was nothing. I questioned myself if it was worth it anymore, or if it was just better to just try and get off the island instead. I thought bad things, and to keep myself from thinking too much about it, I built these things from the schematics that I had found. The church, the massive cross, and even the very big and unnecessary tower. This schematic was found in the cave where there seemed to be a very lonely person who had just had enough. So when standing on the top of this tower, I wondered what it had been used for. I stood there for a very long time. I thought that maybe it was time to go away from here. So I checked through all the things that I had one last time. The weird, scary texts, the useful tools, and all of Timmy's drawings, and the only picture I had of Timmy. I put the picture back, but just as I did, I looked at the schematics again and saw something that I had somehow missed every time before. In the same cave where I found this tower schematic, I had apparently picked up a schematic for a glider. A glider? Something that could get me down into the sinkhole. All of a sudden, my hope was at a new high. All I needed to build it was animal skins and cannibal body parts. So I used all of my animal skins and then went out to look for the cannibal parts that I needed. I ran through the forest and found a pack of cannibals. I killed 2 of them while the others ran off, so I followed them and got them too. I took the parts I needed and completed my glider. It was now time to go down there, so I climbed to the very top of the jump tower and threw myself over the edge. I made it to the bottom and looked around me and saw tons of mutants. If there were tons of mutants here, it has to be connected to the laboratory somehow. I killed some of them, but when this one approached me, I saw this cave entrance at the bottom of this tiny lake, so I swam down it. I saw that this cave was quite large, so I started swimming. I came to the other side, and luckily for me, it actually continued on. There were some mutants down here, but they were no match for me anymore. I walked through what seemed to be a man-made carved corridor, and that is when I saw something extremely odd. What in the world? Was it here? Was the lab actually here? I walked towards the door and saw a keycard pad, so I took out my keycard. Don't swear. I walked through the corridor quietly and slowly, thinking that someone was probably going to find out that I had made it in. I see a bucket of red paint. The red man has been here. I knew it. Confusingly enough, there was no other way to go but up this rope, so I went up the rope. I found this document with a picture of Megan attached to it. I continued and found that the laboratory was completely empty. There was no sign of life anywhere, and it seemed as if something had happened here that drove everyone off. It was very messy and things were broken everywhere. Was it a mutant in one of the tapes that did all of this? I then came to this corridor filled with children's beds. They had been doing things with kids. I found this science book next to one of the beds where there was a picture of the artifact and a text saying that you can bring back the dead. Were they trying to bring people back to life? Or were they maybe trying to fix incurable diseases, and that is why Megan was here? From the videos it seemed as if she was in a wheelchair, so it could explain something. The room next door was the observation room that I had seen in the videos. They were trying to cure these kids, but instead turned them into mutant monsters. How? I walked a bit further to see that one of the mutants was still alive, so I had to kill it. Some of these had really gone way too far. I then found these crayons that belonged to Megan. And then I came to the actual laboratories where I could see that people had been working on various things having to do with the mutants and the artifact. I walked through this door and came to the artifact. This was the thing that everyone was so obsessed with. It was connected to some equipment and monitors showing outlines of 2 people. I didn't really understand what it meant, so I looked around the lab and that's when I saw him, the red man. But he wasn't alive. Just by him I found another videotape. I walked towards him and I was really confused. In red behind him it said "Daddy's dead" and he had crayons in his face. I found these crayons before that belonged to Megan. Is the red man Megan's father? Wait, wasn't Megan killed when the mutants escaped? Wait, doesn't that mean that he's revived her? And he had Timmy? Oh no, oh no, oh no. He needed another child to make his live. The artifact does give life, but it also takes one. How did the red man even get him in the first place? How did we crash here at all? I went back into the room where he laid and found this paper that said that we believe that the device can bring down a plane. I then watched the videotape that I had found, and it showed another mysterious artifact that made beaming noises. I looked at the paper again and realized that the red man has purposefully pulled our plane down to save his daughter. He had not only killed Timmy, but everyone on that plane to feel less guilty about accidentally killing his own daughter while bringing her to a laboratory turning children into mutants. I didn't know what to do until I saw these footsteps leading out of the lab. Megan was here somewhere. I then came to this massive room. I walked to the other side, and that is when I saw her. Megan was sitting there playing with a toy plane. She made the plane crash and then pointed at me. She knew what had happened. But then something disturbing happened. She just started shaking and a mutant came out of her. I didn't know what to do but to save myself, so I had to fight back. This was the strongest mutant I had fought yet, and it felt like nothing was biting on it. After minutes of fighting, I finally was able to kill it. I walked towards it and it seemed that Megan was no longer alive. I picked her up and walked all the way back to the artifact and tried to use her to revive Timmy. But just as I had thought, I needed a living person. But as she fell, she dropped a keycard that led to the other door, so I went through there. I walked through the corridor, but then I had to go back into the caves because the doors were blocked. I walked through the caves but made it back into the laboratory, and there was not a person in here as well. I walked and got to this elevator that got me up in the mountains. Here was the second artifact. From this window you could see the entire island that I had been on. This is where I had been surviving for the last 100 days. But now, it was time to get away from here. From here is where the red man forced our plane to crash. He made all of this happen to me. And now I have the choice to let someone else go through the entire thing that I did to save my son, or turn it off for good. Just by one click of a button, I can decide the fate of so many lives. Have this place turned me into someone who kills others for the benefits of myself? I mean, I killed the cannibals even though they were only trying to survive just as I did. Am I better than the people who did this in the first place? Or am I not? Is Timmy worth more than all the passengers on this plane? I can activate or turn it off for good. All I have to do is click.